Welcome everybody. Today we are going to make our drums sound like these. So there's a lot of things to talk about, and I can talk about tuning the drums, I can talk about choosing the right cymbals, I can talk about choosing the right drums. Today, I'm going to talk to you about one thing: triggers. In a lot of ways, triggering is an absolute must, at least in this genre of music that we're mixing. And it's for two reasons. Number one, sometimes as a mixing engineer, you're gonna get sources that are just absolutely horrible, and it's out of your control to go back and re-record the drums. Number two, a lot of the times your drum recordings are not recorded in a big room or a room that sounds nice, like this room. This is my room. It's very tiny and it sounds awful. So I don't even bother setting up room mics when I record drums in here. And especially this song, I was in charge of producing and mixing this song, and everything was recorded in this room, and it sounds huge thanks to the wonderful and revolutionary and amazing and just incredible technology that is triggering. So let's jump into it. Epic intro. All right, so we're inside the we're inside Ableton, and this is the session file for my friend's song "In Jesus' Name" by Michael Choi. I recommend you go and give it a listen. It's been out for a while, and thanks to Michael Choi, we get to dissect the drums in this song. All right, so thank you, Michael Choi. Everybody, thank you. I just broke down the session into not drums and drums because I'm gonna mute the not drums and we're gonna listen to the drums. All right, this is what we had before the triggering and the processing. This is how it sounded. Which, you know what? That doesn't sound too bad. But listen to this. Sounds completely different. Now, is one better than the other? I don't know. Up to you. It's a preference thing. But in the context of this song needed that big room vibe, that big room drum vibe, the Bethel vibe, the elevation worship vibe. Because my room isn't Bethel, because my room isn't elevation, I needed to work some magic on this thing. Here's a couple things that I did that were very essential. Number one, process your triggers in parallel. Well, what is parallel? Well, parallel processing is you got one channel, one instance of whatever. You're going to duplicate that channel and process this one differently. That's what we're doing with the trigger. I'm making a separate channel. Instead of using trigger as an insert in my kick drum or snare drum channel, I'm duplicating my kick drum channel and I'm placing the trigger in that second duplicate. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to process the two differently, and that's going to help me kind of play around with my raw drum and my processed trigger drum, and I'm going to carve out some space in my raw drum so that the samples can play with the raw drum nicely together in a cohesive way. All right, so let's check it out. I'm just going to play the dry kick drum for you all by itself. and you'll hear how sad and miserable it sounds. All right, now I'm gonna start dialing in the trigger, and you'll just see how much of a big difference it makes. The big difference there is that there's a room sample embedded in the trigger samples that I used. There's a lot more stereo information being introduced as I'm dialing in the kick samples. So let's check out what kind of samples I used. I'm using trigger 2, and just a little tip for you out there, practical tip, pro tip, little secret, little insider knowledge. All these plugin companies really love to put on sales by the end of the year, especially around Black Friday, especially around Cyber Monday, especially around Christmas, especially around the New Year. If I were you, I would go check out some of these plugin websites just to see if they're on sale. I got mine on sale. I think I got it for about $100. Anyway, we got got trigger pulled up here, and that's Billy. That's my dog. So he's barking right now. He's defending my house. He's doing a good job. I got the samples pulled up here, and what I'm using is that sound Mint 70s kit. It's from iwantthatsound.com, and they have the most affordable and the most amazing and the most usable drum samples, especially for the worship genre. I recommend the Mint 70s kit, and I also recommend the 1985 drums deluxe. They have they have a lot of usable and appropriate sounds for this genre, and I think it was only about $30, so I totally recommend. And here is what they sound like. Very dry, but it's very usable. It's got a nice roundness to it and plenty of low end. And let's check out the other one. You blend the two together and you get something like this. So now, because it's running in parallel, I can process it differently. I can EQ this stuff. I can compress it. You can do all kinds of stuff. All right, but that's for you to experiment and figure out. All right, so try a bunch of things. I recommend if your drums don't sound good, then maybe lower your original tone and bump up the trigger. If it's opposite, your drums sound great, but you just want to supplement it with a little bit of a more sauce, a little bit more stereo width, a little bit more beef, do the opposite. Pull up your original drums and maybe just pull in a little bit of your triggered samples. Same thing for snare triggers. I would definitely do it in parallel and process it differently, compress it differently, put some reverb on it, maybe EQ it differently, carve out some space so each element has its own place to roam in, all right? Second thing that is crucial to making my drum sound beefy is parallel compression. Let's say I set all my levels, I triggered my drums, I EQ'd all my toms, whatever, and I'm kind of happy with how it sounds, and I just need this like last final polishing touch. And for me, that's parallel compression. Just like how I've been processing my triggers in parallel, it's the same concept, except now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna group all my drums together into one single group. And I'm going to duplicate that channel, or I'm going to duplicate that bus, put compression on it. Here is where all my drums are. My kick, my snare drum, my toms, my overheads, my cymbals. I'm going to all group into one dry group. All right, this is called dry because I got no bus processing on it. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to make a new channel, and I'm going to pull in the audio from the dry drum group. There it is. There it is. All right, I'm going to pull it in. Now I'm also going to put post FX. Oh yeah, what this does is if I put it in post mixer, the volume that I set here directly affects how much I'm pulling the audio into this channel. So I don't want to do that. I just want to get everything up to whatever effects I have going on here before it hits the fader. Okay, so I have effectively now duplicated my drum group. All right, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna delete this because that's what I have going on right here in my parallel compression channel. I'm just gonna turn it on. And what compressor you use, that's really up to you. I can give a few recommendations, I guess. I like the API 2500. It's got a lot of mid-range punch. It sounds amazing, especially for this Bethel kind of track where the drums really need to hit aggressively. I like API 2500. I also really like the SSL-G compressor. Fun fact, on Ableton, it comes as a stock plugin. It's called the Glue compressor. That is an emulation of the SSL-G bus compressor. And I don't know. I've never used the actual SSL-G compressor, so I can't tell you if it sounds anything like it, but that's what it's supposed to emulate, and I like the way it sounds. Number 3, I like the Zener limiter from Chandler Limited. The API and the Chandler Limited, they are UAD plugins, and so they're going to be a little bit more on the pricey range. So if you're going to choose a stock plugin from Ableton or something like that, I do recommend the Glue compressor. It sounds great. So let's check out what this does. I'm gonna compress the heck out of this thing. I mean, let's just check the meters, yeah? All right, so my parallel compression is muted for now, but as you can tell, it's reducing a lot. If I just played it by itself, you'll hear that it's almost an unusable amount of compression. I mean, that's a sound, man. That sounds really cool, but it is aggressive, and it's a lot of compression, and frankly, it kind of sucks the life out of your drums. So what I'm gonna do, this is why we do parallel compression, because now I'm gonna slowly dial it back in, and it'll kind of blend the two together, and we'll see what that does. So in essence, what parallel compression does is it fattens up your drum bus and your drum mix without compromising the transients. Because we have the dry original drum group going, and we're just tucking in that parallel compression underneath, it's kind of filling up the gaps and really fattening up your drums. Why don't we compare the API 2500 to the glue compressor and see how that one sounds. All right, as I like to do with any kind of comparison, I'm just gonna key map this thing to a keyboard letter just so I can toggle it on and off with just a little press of a button. And let's just see how the glue compressor sounds on its own. So to my ears, the glue compressor really brings in the side information for some reason, at least from what I'm hearing. I'm hearing a lot of the room and the reverb that's being brought up by the glue compressor. And so when we sneak that up underneath the dry channel or the dry drum group, it's really going to kind of beefing up the stereo information even more. So let's try blending it in. All right, so I'm gonna turn on the dry group again. I'm slowly gonna dial in the parallel compression here. Alright, so now I'm just gonna try and toggle back and forth between the API 2500 and the glue compressor. Let's see what that difference is. I love the sound of both, but in my opinion, I think the API 2500 has that punch and mid-range clarity that I really like about it, and so that's what I usually opt for, especially in this genre. So that's parallel compression for you. Even though with the parallel compression it gets a lot louder, you can already tell in the tone and how it covers up those little gaps between the transients. It really fattens up your drum sound. It's a really useful technique, and so I really recommend experimenting with different compressors. You don't even necessarily need to use any of the ones I mentioned. Those are just some of my favorites, and so just go wild and experiment in your parallel drum processing. You could even probably saturate it with the overdrive or the saturator or the decapitator. You can try a bunch of different things to beefing up your drum sound. The last thing I'm going to share with you is another parallel processing, and that's reverb. So you've got everything ready. You've mixed your drums. You've compressed it. And now we just want to spice it up a little bit more. So what I usually do is I pull up another instance of a parallel channel. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to slap a reverb on it. And for the sake of this example, I'm going to delete the one I used before. It's called Ozone Reverb. And I'm going to bring in something from Ableton. I'm going to use the Convolution Reverb Pro. I've been really liking the sound of this reverb. I highly recommend using convolution reverb for drums. In essence, a convolution reverb models the sound after an actual space. I don't know how it works mathematically, but it has something to do with impulse response, and basically it models an actual physical space. sounds really natural for drums. So I really recommend it. It works super well. And I love the sound of the Convolution Reverb Pro. Particularly, I like the Woodroom Large. So let's check out how that sounds. I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna let it play and I'll dial in until it sits just right. All right, so let's compare before and after reverb. So you'll have to dial it in detail depending on how your mix is going. You might have to do less or more. Depends on the mix, depends on the context. But you can tell already it brings up, it livens up your drums a lot, and it'll really place your drums in a physical space. It'll sound like your drums was recorded in an actual big room. And so I recommend a convolution reverb at the end of your drum mix. All right, so 3 things to summarize: triggering in parallel compression, and reverb in parallel. I hope you found this one useful. I know I didn't go in detail, but talking about drums, it's a lot of information to cover. This is already my 3rd try to try and cutting it down, because the other ones ran past an hour, and somebody complained that I talk too much, which is a very rare phenomenon. So I hope you found this one useful, and as always, if you have questions, feel free to reach out and I'll try and get to those. Meanwhile, go out there, mix some drums and have fun and praise the Lord. All right, peace out.